Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in. Before we start, just quick announcements. Until the end of August, I will be running one video every 2 weeks, after which point I will be reevaluating the upload schedule and the content. Without further ado, here is the dangers of contradictory beliefs. Let's say you have a rock. It has definite properties. It's hard, it's sharp. We can observe these things in reality. Let's further specify that it's got 4 sharp corners and that it's a rough approximation of a parallelogram in shape. With the above characteristics in mind, we can begin to extrapolate true ideas about the rock that match up to those characteristics. If it's hard and sharp, it will cut softer things which you apply it to. If it is translucent, then light will pass through it in a particular way. The list goes on. What happens if you start thinking that the rock has some other number of points? Leaving aside ragged edges with an indeterminable number of points on them, the number of corners a rock has shouldn't be a matter for discussion. You can point to them, count, and resolve any uncertainty you might have. If you try to hold a contradictory belief, it will demolish your ability to think coherently about reality. The rock has a specific number of points, and imagining it otherwise means that you won't be thinking about the rock clearly when you try to imagine how it will react to forces being applied to it. It is not possible to live effectively while holding contradictory beliefs about any element of the world you live in. If you think that a boulder has about the same hardness and elasticity as a mattress, and you decide on this basis to use one to break your fall from a height of 6 feet, then you probably won't be making this mistake again. The reason for all this is that reality and all of its contents are what they are. Contradictory beliefs of all kinds will have metaphorically similar effects to the aforementioned boulder mattress, because your ability to live effectively demands that your thinking about reality consist of true statements, images, and models about or of reality. Rocks are a nice example of some of the above points, and in this field they have much to recommend them. You won't find many people outside of a geology department willing to argue about rocks. What people are prepared to argue about is other people. What makes people behave a certain way? What do they actually want and need in their lives? Why do they keep preventing me from being popular? The first 2 questions lead down rabbit holes in psychology, praxeology, and assorted branches of philosophy. The third could be called the central misdirection at the heart of Watamote. For the sake of clarity, I would like to stress at this point that Tomoko's problems do not arise primarily from other people. This means that the statement, quote, "no matter how I look at it, it's you guys' fault I'm not popular," unquote, is untrue for Tomoko. She might, in some instances, think that it is, but she's wrong, and we know it. At no point in this story do we see any person actively conspiring against her. Watamote shows us only Tomoko's attempts to do things, and the various failure states which these courses terminate at. So why does Tomoko keep failing? It's because she holds contradictory beliefs. In the first chapter, we see Tomoko consider the definition of mojio, which she interprets to mean an ugly girl who is unpopular with boys. She briefly runs down her social life in middle school, stating that boys had talked to her 6 whole times. She enthuses about high school and her alleged preparedness for the social scene, before we smash cut to her reading alone during lunch break and observing that nobody's talked to her at all in almost 2 months. While trying to reassure herself over this apparent failure, Tomoko tells us precisely what her own thought process is. Quote, "Who cares about those girls and their random cliques? They're all just shallow, boy-crazy idiots. and the guys who go for ditzes like that are just dirt anyhow." Unquote. So despite the fact that Tomoko was talking about a desire for the attention of her male classmates merely 2 pages ago, she now says that her socially inclined male classmates are dirt, and the girls are a bunch of ditzes. Tomoko wants popularity, but also states that she does not want popularity amongst or attention from her own classmates. This contradiction leads to the conflicting desires to be sociable on the one hand, and to isolate herself from people on the other. This conflict creates clashing goals. Talk to people, try to reach out, try to improve in ways that increase popularity, versus hide, don't draw attention, seek isolation. Anybody who has ever procrastinated on something knows the feelings that this can give rise to. You develop guilt over not doing the thing you think you should be doing. You might become increasingly anxious over getting the thing done. But Tomoko cannot get that thing done. Not while she's trying to hold on to that contradiction. The conflict and the negative emotions that it engenders become all-consuming, debilitating, and inescapable. At a certain point, the symptoms become aggravated enough for the condition to be rightly called a disorder. Now, I need to put this bluntly. I'm not a professional psychologist, counselor, or therapist. I'm an amateur philosophy and anime enthusiast, packing my ideas up as content in order to share them with others who might be interested. If you are suffering or suspect that you might be suffering from any kind of disorder, medical, psychological, emotional, etc., then seek professional help. I got help with my executive function issues, and now I've gotten to the point where I can actually sit down, make a script, record, edit, and publish it. I used to make recordings of fanfiction reading, and now I'm doing original content. Self-improvement is possible, and I am the living proof. If I'm not enough for you, there are plenty of stories waiting for you if you Google for self-improvement success stories. You can better yourself, and it starts with recognizing an issue and deciding to do something about it. So back to Tomoko. How could she go about actually overcoming this contradiction? Correctly identifying it is a process which might take time. It took me almost a month to track down the major contradictions in my head, and I had professional help. On your own, you might try examining the things you're anxious about using the 5-fold why I discussed in my last post. If you find out why you're doing or want to do a certain thing, you can find out if it contradicts with other desires or other ideas. If it does, you can trace the contradicting ideas back to their respective roots. You will either arrive at something which is self-evidently true, like survival requires successfully reaching multiple known goals, or you'll find some incorrect assumptions that you can correct. Discarding and overcoming the mistakes you've made in your thinking before now isn't going to be easy. It might take months or even years, but the outcome is worth it because you'll be better equipped to interact with reality.